The true goal of cinema media and actually film production for me is that doctors are able to tell their stories. Do you have a story that you want to be told, and how do you want it to be told? I mean, you can tell it on the stage, you can tell it on a podcast, and now, in my opinion, you should be able to tell it within movies, in documentaries, in actual films. Don't be afraid. I mean, I think, especially with the climate of medicine now, being able to be displaced by nurse practitioners, PAs, or any other person, you really have to be able to own your own story, own your own world, so that that at the end of the day, you're able to pay for food, housing, student loans. Those are important. And as long as you're the controller of that, not everyone wants to be a business owner. Not everyone wants to do that, but that doesn't mean you can't tell your story. And how you do that is up to you.
Welcome to the Licensed to Live show, where professionals, doctors, champions, VIPs, attorneys, and those in public office discover strategies that help you restart and gain what is lost when you find yourself accused. If another has doubted your integrity, questioned your credentials, or caused your actions to come under scrutiny, you are in the right place. On the other hand, if you have never felt the knot in the pit of your stomach when legal papers are served, the heartbreak of disappointing your family when the lock clicks shut on handcuffs, or had to appear before a board of review, then be aware, the longer you serve, the more likely you are to find yourself under the microscope of those who judge. Prepare yourself for this uncomfortable possibility. Now, here's your host, Dr. Jarrett Patton.
Welcome to this episode of License to Live. My name is Dr. Jarrett Patton, and I am your host for our journey together today and every day you choose to listen to this show. If you or anyone you know has been dissed in their career, please invite them along this journey. Just go to Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to Licensed to Live. And when you're there, please rate this episode and give me honest feedback so I make sure I provide you with the most up-to-date information about career and life changes. When I say dissed, you guys know what I mean. I mean disengaged, dissatisfied, disgruntled, disenfranchised, all of that. All of that goes in the dissed category. Today, we will be talking with Dr. Cyntrell Crawford, a psychiatrist, an addiction specialist, a best-selling author of The Urge Fix, also a podcast host herself, and a film producer. So today we're going to talk with her from her transition from psychiatry to film production and what actually went that way. Now, we have had an earlier episode, one of the earliest episodes of License to Live with Dr. Cyntrell Crawford, so you can hear all about her background in addiction medicine, as well as The Urge Fix, which I strongly recommend you guys go back and listen to, and I will have that episode linked to the show notes. We'll be back right after a word from our sponsor. Emmett Hayes III Coffee Company, EH3, specializes in selecting 100% Arabica coffee beans from distinct coffee growing regions across the globe. EH3 Coffee Company offers an exclusive brand of organic coffee beans and blends. All coffee products are craft roasted to perfection, which yields consistency and quality, taste, and optimal flavor. EH3's quest is to create an evolutionary coffee experience for every single customer, every single time. Get your coffee today at emmitscoffee.com. That's EMMITTSCOFFEE.com. Welcome to License to Live, Dr. Cyntrell.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing, Dr. Jarrett?
Thanks for coming on the show today. It's such a pleasure to have you back. I mean, anytime I can have a guest back, and I knew from the first time we talked, we would have you back, but a lot has been going on since 2018 when we published that first episode.
Credentials verified.
So I definitely wanted to have you back and just get an update on all of the really cool things you've been up to right now. So, you've been on the show before, and we always talk about being dissed and dissed. But have you ever been dissed in your career before?
Oh, no, not another test.
Well, actually, I'll talk about our most recent diss, I guess. In psychiatry and in medicine now, I actually have no problems with PAs and NPs. I think they're valuable to our practice, especially in underserved areas. But recently I got sort of displaced, so to speak, by a company who would rather hire, a nurse practitioner versus me. And clearly it was just a money decision. I feel like they were actually underpaying me, but still I guess they just needed to do an even more of a pay gap. But it was okay. I was easily able to find another position because, psychiatrists are in demand. But I for a split second, maybe a little bit more than a split second, I felt some type of way. I trained. I have 12 years. I also have a master's in public health. So that's an additional 2 years. So 14 years of training to get into the position as to be a psychiatrist and to just be replaced. There's already competition with psychiatrists, but now to add nursing and physician assistants to the list, it's kind of disheartening.
Displaced. That's a great diss. And it's happening to people all the time. It's happening to people, especially now that we're in this COVID pandemic, post-COVID pandemic era, and finding a way to rebound from that and make your own path is something that is incredible. And I'm glad that you are doing that and you're showing other people in what you have done. And part of the reason I wanted to have you on today is to talk about you and what you've been doing even most recently. Now, I understand you have this film called Us versus the Plant that you've been working on. So now you're like an official film director, film producer. You are really in this Hollywood thing. Tell us what got you interested in filmmaking.
What got me interested? Watching TV, pretty much. Watching Grey's Anatomy, watching Tyler Perry movies and all those other movies that have these little snippets of medicine and psychiatry and mental health. But then you always wonder, who was their advisor? Who advised them that this is how it actually looks? Why is the electrode placed on a patient's forehead versus where it should be on, why is the person talking with a tube down their throat? How is that even possible? Why is the janitor in the surgical suite while there's actual surgery going on? I've never seen that. I don't know. Maybe it happens. I don't know. But the nursing staff at my training hospital, it was very military. You need to be in sterile gowns. You need to do this. You need to do that. There were no extra people just running in and out of the rooms. And then also just the ability to be able to tell a story, to start with a concept and develop it into something that can be visually seen by someone else. That interests me too. So with the Urge Fix podcast, that was my first producer feel of, coming up with episodes, coming up with the theme of the episode, writing the script, then actually having to develop it and actually create it and put it out into the world and see what happens. So then I was like, let's take it a little bit further. Another thing that I noticed is that with my current career path of being in the public spotlight, I actually am a little bit afraid of the camera. But I noticed I didn't mind being behind the camera. So then I was like, maybe what is it like being back there and having someone else be the center focus and trying to direct them into telling their story or creating a story, creating a soundbite, And what would that look like for me to actually be that person? Because there's always Will Smith, right? We like Will Smith, but actually, who's the guy who made the movie? We don't really know who that is, but, he has a story, he has a purpose. And without him, Will Smith wouldn't be the actor he is. And Tyler Perry shows that too. Tyler Perry started out with his stage plays. He turned to stage plays. And actually, his story, he says, I just wanted to do one stage play. That's all I wanted. He didn't focus on like a whole bunch of things. I don't know if he even dreamt that he would be where he is now with Tyler Perry Studios at this stage of his life. But, he started with one stage play. He produced those. And then he turned those stage plays, the same script, into an actual movie, made money from that. And then he just started I don't want to say try. He was an actor for a little bit in other movies, but then, his real talent was producing and filming his own scripts. And now he makes, actually the last movie he made, I thought was really good. It just came out. It came out in December. He said he's filmed it in 1 month. I was like, Jesus, I don't even know how you do that. That's just backing of money for sure.
Yeah, that's when you're big time and you have your own studio, and that may be very well where you're headed, because your current project is full of storytelling, and luckily I was able to get a sneak peek of it. Just for you fire starters out there, storytelling is an extremely powerful way to tell your story or someone's story, but it's also inspiring to others and empowering to others. So, I've encouraged you to tell your stories here. Be proud of your stories. Whether the stories are good stories or bad stories, they're still meaningful in your life and they can be impactful for others. So thanks for mentioning storytelling, Dr. Cyntrell, because storytelling is something that is incredible, and it affects many people's lives, even if you don't touch them directly. Now, Us versus the Plant is a docufilm about medical marijuana. So what got your interest in the subject of medical marijuana, and what was it like making this film?
Well, one thing with the storytelling, when I first started out in medicine, as far as medical marijuana goes, marijuana was said to be the gateway drug. As a psychiatrist, when I see a positive THC, I'm worried that the patient is either abusing it, or I'd say he's abusing it, or what else are they using that maybe I don't know about? So it always leads to all these other questions that I was trained to ask. About 2 years ago, even though Colorado and Washington had legalized marijuana, it really wasn't a countrywide issue. And I practice mostly in Pennsylvania. So about 2 years ago, when medical marijuana started popping up in Florida and Pennsylvania and all these other little states, and just kind of snowballed, you get more questions from your patients, and I'm sure doctors are experiencing this, is can marijuana help me? I knew of the climate of marijuana changing in the country. So honestly, I didn't know what to say to that. I was not trained to say, oh, yes, marijuana can help you with your pain, maybe some your pain, your chronic appetite problems, and all the other stuff that is recommended for anxiety. That's a whole nother conversation. It's recommended for those things now. I wasn't prepared to say that. I'll be honest, I don't even know how prepared I am to say it to patients even today. But it's the questions I'm often asked. And actually now, when I get to THC, I have to dig into my mind like, okay, is this patient using recreational THC? Because in Pennsylvania, there's medical marijuana, but also there's THC on the street. And then I have to say, oh, do they have a medical card? They all claim to have a medical card, but then half of them do not, and because it's so expensive right now for people to get the card and then go into the dispensaries. So honestly, I started the movie or the documentary just because I wanted to ask myself, well, is it helpful? can it help a patient? Can it be used for something other than recreational? And actually, I think the country's probably going to move to recreational. So it was a long journey into trying to figure out if we're going the right route with legalizing medical marijuana.
And you really did your homework. I mean, not only did you have filming locations coast to coast in the U.S., you even traveled internationally to Jamaica. So I mean, you're really going about trying to tell this story in a very comprehensive way. And I can't wait for all of you out there to get a chance to take a look at the film. When do you plan to start showing the film?
Well, it was actually going to be started showing 4/20, but since there's this thing called COVID and everyone is social distancing and everything is kind of at a halt currently, that's delayed. Currently, it's delayed to June 4th, 2020, but we'll see how that goes. I actually did do an extensive research project or production. I started in Florida. I went to Florida twice for the movie. Then I went to Pennsylvania. After Pennsylvania, I went to Jamaica, which actually, it's not as free-flowing as that I initially thought. That was actually interesting. When I went to Florida, when I went to Pennsylvania, I actually could smell weed on the street. But when I went to Jamaica, I went to I walked Jamaica, which is probably not a good idea, but I did because weather is beautiful. And I went to a bunch of different sites in Kingston, Jamaica. And I honestly could tell you, I didn't smell marijuana once.
Now, the irony of that, you actually smell it when you're in these United States locations, and everybody kind of has that idea that Jamaica is very free flowing with the weed and smoking marijuana all the time, and you didn't even smell it at all there.
I didn't smell it at all. And actually, I had an interesting trip. It actually is not as widely used or widely spoken of use as we believe. It's actually a part of the Rastafarian sacrament, and they actually have particular rules for that. And as one Jamaican, actually two of them said, high-class Jamaicans are not smoking weed. That's just not what they're doing. Then I went to LA twice. I went to Colorado. Colorado was the most fun. And actually it was not the most weed I smelled. Florida was. Colorado. Then I went to New Orleans and Louisiana because they actually, while I was producing the movie, they actually also did the medical marijuana route. And I talked to people across the nation. I talked to people in DC. I talked to people in Washington, where else? Chicago, Alabama, different parts of the country just to see. And honestly, each state is different. They're using similar guidelines, but when it comes down to it, each state is ruling about the use and the distribution of medical marijuana in their state differently. Actually, the most unique, I actually live in Louisiana, even though I practice most of my work is in Pennsylvania. Louisiana is actually doing it quite differently, as if they're actually putting it in their pharmacies. Like most other states have dispensaries, but Louisiana has allowed 9 pharmacies to actually distribute medical marijuana to their patient, which is actually interesting. If you want to call it medical, it probably should be in the pharmacies. So that was interesting.
Yeah, it makes more sense as a patient that way. Absolutely. Because it just goes in that medical pipeline. And so it's anything medical.
Yeah, it goes in the medical pipeline. And also, it goes to, when I'm going to get my medicine, I go to a pharmacy. I don't usually go to a dispensary, but I wonder how that's going to affect the actual distribution and what it would look like if you compare it to things like Florida, which have dispensaries, Pennsylvania's have dispensaries, Colorado, LA. LA actually has recreational and medical dispensaries.
Yeah, so it's great stuff. So I'm going to tell you guys the best way to keep up with the film and the locations when it does start screening again, once we're under less restrictions from COVID, make sure you're going to usversustheplant.com. You can check out the link in the show notes, and we'll have that going. So what projects are you working on now in film production?
Oh, well, actually, I've slowed down a little bit because I do need to focus on distributing the film and letting people actually see what I've created. So right now I'm just working on the editing of the film, working on how to distribute it to other people so that they can watch it. There's other films, but you don't really want to. That's just not how it works, because you don't want your ideas to be stolen.
That's fair. So trust me, folks, when we say this, there's more coming. You'll see more from Cyntrell Media. That's her production company, and you'll hear a lot more from Dr. Cyntrell.
The true goal of Cyntrell Media and actually film production for me is that doctors are able to tell their stories. Do you have a story that you want to be told, and how do you want it to be told? I mean, you can tell it on the stage, you can tell it on a podcast, and now, in my opinion, you should be able to tell it within movies, in documentaries, in actual films. Don't be afraid. I mean, I think especially with the climate of medicine now, being able to be displaced by nurse practitioners, PAs, or any other person, you really have to be able to own your own story, own your own world, so that you know that at the end of the day, you're able to pay for food, housing, student loans. Those are important. And as long as you're the controller of that, not everyone wants to be a business owner. Not everyone wants to do that, but that doesn't mean you can't tell your story. And how you do that is up to you.
Wow. Another example of being in control of your own stuff, your own businesses. And we try to highlight that a lot here on License to Live. Just because you're a physician, just because you're a professional, just because you're a VIP with a long, extensive history in some field does not mean you don't have talents that can be used in fields outside of your primary certification. And we're definitely getting an example here with Dr. Cyntrell today. Dr. Cyntrell, where can people learn more about you?
Well, you can go to my website at drcyntrell.com, drcyntrell.com. If you want to learn more about the film, go to Us versus the Plant, USVSTHEPLANT.com. Actually, Dr. Jarrett, I'm not going to let you pull this one off. You're being modest. Okay. So let us know how it was being the narrator of my film.
Oh, now the tables have turned. The podcast host has become the podcast guest, and artfully done by another podcast host. So if you haven't heard, if you haven't seen, some of my posts on social media, and you can always find my social media at Dr. Jarrett. Spell out the word doctor, JA2RSE1T. And yes, I am the narrator of this film. And Dr. Cyntrell, this was all about you and not about me. But since you asked the question, it really was a very neat experience. And by working with you, working with other producers of your film and other directors and your staff, working with your makeup artists, the lighting people, the sound people. I mean, it was something I have never done in my life to that extent. And so, yes, it was a new experience. At the same time, it was a growth opportunity for me because I did something I never dreamed I would do, being outside of medical school or being outside going through medicine. It's like, for me being a hospital executive all my life, the last thing I was thinking about was being in a movie. But since you asked, I had an incredible time working with you and your staff to be the narrator in this piece. And I just thank you tremendously for the opportunity to be able to do so. Thank you.
The best part of filming is trying to set up the shot. I remember when we were filming your narration part, lights. That was a lot of lights.
It was a lot of lights. I felt like I was getting a suntan. I felt like I was, in the middle of the Caribbean where it's nice and hot all day. And if I'm standing in a suit when it's hot, I'm going to be sweaty.
Well, thank God we were in California because it was not that bad.
It was very nice there and very nice. So I was able to keep my cool even under the pressure.
So actually, that wasn't the first time I filmed you. You helped me with an interview with one of the stories, a part of the film. So yeah, it was definitely it was a big project. It was a big project. There's a lot of moving parts that actually I didn't even know about. I mean, I'm still learning about some of the parts, music right now. When I first started, all I cared about was having a camera and a person to interview. And if I actually had the right questions, once I learned that, then I realized, wait, this person actually have to look good in this camera. This has to be on TV, so I have to care about if the person has makeup on, what clothing they're wearing, are they properly mic'd? Then I had to care about, was I following the script? Was the script actually the story being told properly? Then towards the end, now I'm worried about, okay, where do I put this song to make this interesting? Where do I put this shot here to make the story pop? How do I edit this right? How are these transitions going to get smoother in this movie so that people can actually follow the story the way I want them to? So it's definitely in B-roll. I'm learning B-roll, which is, usually pre-film footage, like news reports, maybe some marijuana shots, smoking scenes. I mean, if I have stuff that I film myself, but actually trying to get licensed B-roll, it's very expensive. I wish I'd have known how expensive it was initially. So this is actually a big learning process for me. It's been a year, 2 days ago, the 20th of March. My first filming was March 27th.
Wow. Last
year, 2019. So it's been a year and now I'm editing it for the release, but it's a process. It's a lot of different moving parts, what you see on the TV, when you see those large list of people, executive producer, director, makeup artist, sound effects guy,
all those credits,
production, direction, lighting. I mean, all of that, all of those things, all of those jobs matter. And being that this is my first one, it's self-funded, some of those hats were worn by me.
See, that's what makes you, Dr. Cyntrell. You have the ability to do it all, and you can do it all. And in fact, you just got the right team members behind you, and you've pulled off this film. And I can't wait for people to get a chance to see it. I am thanking you for coming on the show today. Again, you've been a wonderful guest and a wonderful host of my own podcast as you turned the tables on me earlier. So I appreciate you doing that. And thank you for coming on the show.
Well, actually, speaking of my team, I want to shout out Marcel of Blackwood. He was phenomenal in helping me create this movie. He was definitely my backbone and my sounding board when stuff was not going the way I wanted. So yeah, Marcel Pickens at Blackwood. He's a videographer, film marketer. He's all of it. Director, producer, writer now.
Shout out to Marcel.
All right.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our audience today?
I just want to make sure, I know this is what your podcast is about. Own your story. Make sure that you're living the life that you want to live. Because, obviously life is short. You never know when something can put, as we're learning in this day and age right now, as today with the COVID-19 pandemic, that, everything's nice and planned, and then all of a sudden there's something that can just put it to a halt. And how do you prepare to get over that stop? How do you prepare yourself or align yourself or make sure that when all of this starts back up, that you're right where you want to be, in the position you want to be, with the same, I don't know, drive as before you had to stop. I mean, the president is so worried about halting the economy so long, and he's probably rightfully so. We're probably learn what the depression was soon. But how do we make it over this stopping place that we all have been put in? Rather we're in the front lines, or we're just social distancing at home, or we have family members in the front line where we have people knowing that they have the coronavirus, and actually family members who are dying of it. How do we make sure that after this is all over, that we are going right back to our lives and living the way we want to live, telling our stories and being the people we want to be?
You've heard it here first, directly from Dr. Cyntrell. There's nothing else I can say. Thanks, Dr. Cyntrell, for being on the show.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Final judgment. Licensed to live.
Remember, fire starters, if you or anyone you know has been disengaged, dissatisfied, displaced, disgruntled, disenfranchised with healthcare, please invite them to join us along this journey. Simply go to your favorite podcast player and subscribe to Licensed to Live. And while you're there, rate this episode and let me know what you think about it. And make sure you hang out with me in LinkedIn. I'm spending lots of time there in between episodes. We have a lot of dialogue, see what I'm going on in my blogs, what other things I've been up to. So make sure you check me out on LinkedIn at Dr. Jarrett and all social media, DoctorJarret. See you next time.
No matter how disheartening the moment of accusation sounds, how deep the pain of immobilization stabs, or how bleak your future looks, no one can take away your license to live. Keep Dr. Jarrett's expertise handy and unlock your future. Go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or another podcast player and subscribe right now to Licensed to Live. See you next time.